Hello, everyone. I'm so happy to have you back here again at our Tea Talk. Today, I want to welcome Arzeena, who is here with us. And thank you so much for taking the time. So, I'm going to introduce you, and then I'm going to start asking you a bunch of good questions.
Yay, let's do it.
All right. So, Arzeena earned her bachelor's degree in crop science from the University of Guelph and a master's in sustainable agriculture from the University of London, England. She worked as a, is it CUSO or Cusco? Cuso?
CUSO. CUSO.
Cuso
Yeah.
volunteer in Thailand and as a researcher in Jamaica, India, and Bangladesh. She was the staff of agroologist for West Coast Seeds from 1997 to 1999 and served as the coordinator of the Richmond Food Security Society from 2008 to 2012. And in 2010, helped launch the Richmond Farm School. She and her husband moved their family to the Comox Valley in 2012 and run Amara Farm, a 25-acre certified organic farm in Courtenay, BC. In 2018, just to make life a little more interesting, Arzeena was elected to the board of the Comox Valley Regional District, where she serves as both vice chair and a director for Area B. So, Arzeena, the reason I invited you today is because of your work with organic gardening, although I will never give up an opportunity to talk a little bit about politics.
Sure.
And I'm also just really pleased to talk to you about how you use this knowledge to create a more sustainable world for everyone. I think this is so important in the changing planet that we are living in today. So, thank you for taking the time to answer a few questions for me about that.
My pleasure.
So, first of all, can you tell us what initially drew you to agriculture and how did your path lead you here to the Comox Valley?
Yeah, sure. It is a bit of a long story, but basically, my family, I don't have a background in farming. That's not part of my family background at all. So it was a very big surprise to my parents that I wanted to study agriculture. At the time I went to university, I was using agriculture as a way in to do community economic development work. Primarily overseas, with my time working in Thailand and in India, um, I wanted to have a skill that I could relate to in rural areas. And so that was initially what brought me into agriculture. When we came back to Canada in 1997, I started getting into more the organic gardening side of things, and which led me to eventually start farming myself. And there was a point where I was farming people's front and backyards throughout the city of Richmond.
Love
That's how
that.
I first got my toe into farming myself, right? And then, quickly realized like this is something I would like to do. My husband was super supportive of it, and we wanted land. And as you probably know, price of farmland in the Lower Mainland is extremely high for those of us who don't have the background and the capital, which made coming to Vancouver Island much more it was much more accessible.
Mhm.
So we were looking up and down the island, and I have to say there were maybe two or three things that drew me to the Comox Valley. We first of all had a look at the farmers market in the Comox Valley, and it just astounded us. Like such a vibrant, well attended market, all kinds of products, and food focused. So that was a big check. And then second of all, we took a drive around the city of Courtenay and could not find. Oh, well, first of all, we were astounded by the number of independent coffee shops that were selling certified organic fair trade coffee. It was like, wow, there was one in Richmond at the time, but here is a very discerning community. And we thought, I think this community is going to accept our organic produce. So that's how we chose Courtney.
It's so amazing. As a person who worked previously with newcomers to Canada, I always find the way that people travel amazing and the pathways to where they found themselves are beautiful. So, thank you for sharing that. So, since arriving in the Comox Valley and creating Amara Farms, can you tell us a little bit about your area of specialization? What do you grow and where do you sell your products?
Yeah. So we are certified organic vegetable and fruit farmers. We've got about 2 acres of vegetables, an acre of blueberries, a quarter acre of black currants. And, we keep on promising that we're not going to start something new and end up, trying new things every year. So this year it's ginger and sweet potato, some new crops for us. And we sell primarily at the farmers market in Courtney. We also have what's called a CSA program. So people purchase a share of vegetables at the beginning of the season, and then we provide them with a weekly box of about 7 to 8 different vegetables per week. And that starts at the end of June. And then we also sell a bit of wholesale to our local health food store, Edible Island. And we have a new market that just opened up in Comox called Portside Produce, which we're supplying. So a little bit of wholesale as well.
That's amazing. How do you grow ginger here?
It's
Sorry,
quite
total
a
sidetrack, but that's amazing.
yeah, it's quite a process. It requires starting the ginger in February, March,
Okay.
indoors. Like ginger is quite a princess crop. Does not like to be cold. Does not like it when the temperatures are below 10 degrees. So it has to be grown for us in a polytunnel. So it's going to go into one of our hoop houses, but it's started indoors. So my house is a jungle of ginger shoots that are coming up. They look a little bit like bamboo when they first come up, and I'm holding and holding. It's been a very cool spring this year. So I was hoping to have them planted outside by now, but no. So just, it's one of the things you do. My house turns into a jungle. The whole family has to deal with it. And yeah, one day it'll get planted outside. So
Okay, awesome. Well, I will be checking in with you because I know
sure.
how hard ginger is to grow. So that's amazing. So, one of the realities for everyone over the past year has been adapting to COVID-19. I'm just wondering if you could tell us a bit about what that looked like for the work that you do.
hmm Yeah. So personally on our farm, when COVID-19 really hit around March time, we were just deciding whether or not to go to the farmers market, and we weren't sure if people would actually come and attend. So to kind of allow people to still have access to produce without contact, because if you remember, there was a whole big like contactless picking up. We decided to start a farm stand here at our place, and have pre-orders so that people didn't have to interact with us, because no one really understood at that time how COVID was really being spread. So that meant having to develop and launch a website, put together a farm store in the matter of about 3 weeks. Now, luckily, I have teenage kids who were home from school because school was also out, and they were able to put a website for me up in pretty short order. And so that was a huge help for me. So just providing as many different outlets, because people's comfort levels have been different, and it's continues. I still find people are not everybody's comfortable coming back to the farmers market. So this year we did continue on with our farm stand, with our online sales. But we know what I found was that for farmers who are selling direct to consumers, it was such a busy year. Just the demand was huge, which sounds awesome. But I think a lot of us were feeling pressure to grow enough food in case the food system collapses and our imports off island don't happen. So I mean, we changed what we grew so much. We'd never grown as many potatoes as we did last year, because we thought, what is the food that can sustain us through a winter time and could at least feed a large number of people? And potatoes tend to be one of them. We grew a lot less salad mix because of that, and so it required shifting a bit of what we grew. And then just trying to get the word out to people that there is local food. Here's a farm stand, coordinating with other farmers who were doing the same thing, putting up farm stands. No one really knew where to find them. So we developed a website, Comox Valley Farm Stands, so that people could see where we are. Yeah, so there was a lot of scrambling, quite a lot of pressure early in the season in 2020. Thankfully, it worked out. People did start coming back to the farmers market, and we had again really high sales. So very thankful to our local community. I think the farmers who had more struggles were the ones who were selling to more of the wholesalers and to like the commodity growers
Mhm.
whose so maybe the restaurants were not buying as much produce, and the industrial kind of milk and egg system was was not as quick to pivot the way that small farms do. And I think that's where there was a big struggle, a big demand, but the process of getting that food, it had already been slotted into the restaurant wholesale system, and trying to get it into where consumers were at was
Mhm.
quite a struggle. So
Mhm.
yeah.
There was a lot of unknowns in the very beginning of COVID, and I mean, still today there's a lot of unknowns.
Sure.
But that first initial sort of shock of how do we do this? What is the best process? And I remember getting calls as well about people very worried about food security, especially in some of our more remote communities where people were like, "We need money to start gardens because I don't know if we're going to be able to get food." Like I think of that time and how overwhelming it was for so many people.
Yeah.
So it seems to me that part of the work you do is also sharing ideas around sustainability and agriculture that protects the environment that we all live in. Can you tell us a bit about how you share these strategies with other folks?
Yeah. Well, I'm going to pick up on your last comment about, people suddenly realize how much of our food is imported off island on Vancouver Island. It's 96%. And I mean, that's one thing that COVID did do is woke people up to that fact that we rely heavily on imports off island. So when people started wanting to grow more food, I was getting emails left, right, and center from people who were like, "I've never grown a garden before. Like, what do I do?" And I'd reply to them, and then 2 seconds later, someone else is asking me the same question. So I reached out to our local food security group, Lush Valley, and said, "I'm seeing this. Are you as well?" And they said yes. I thought, well, why don't, instead of me replying individually, why don't we start some kind of forum where gardeners can share their knowledge and, share the resources, because there's so much in our community. So through Lush, we started the Grow Food Everywhere Comox Valley Facebook group. And in a matter of 2 weeks, we had 500 participants. I was astounded. And, little by little, we started seeding the group with just, here's where you can buy seedlings. Here are the local seed suppliers. Because if you remember, you couldn't find seed to save your life. Like all of the seed companies saw this overwhelming demand. No one could find seed even if they wanted a garden. So we needed to point out, well, there's actually local seed companies here that have seed that maybe the bigger companies are having a hard time sourcing. And just everywhere, like, where do I find soil, where do I find fertilizer, all of those questions we posted on Grow Food Everywhere. And I'm really glad to see it's still going strong. Gardeners are now sharing the knowledge amongst themselves. I check in once in a while just to see what's going on, and I think the community is now over 2,500 people. So really, really great. That's something that I love seeing. Gardeners help each other with that knowledge. So on the local level, that's one of the projects I worked on in 2020. And then at the national level, this fantastic group formed called Farmers for Climate Solutions. And in a matter of months, they brought together farmers, climate scientists, GHG modelers from across Canada to start working together to come up with solutions to climate change that involved agriculture as the solution. And that spoke so well to the things that we do on our farm. And yeah, so I signed up as a participant in a focus group, and soon enough, I was vice chair of the task force, and we were able to put together 6 recommendations to the federal minister of agriculture, which, for the most part, she adopted. I've never worked at that level before, and so it was quite an eye opener. Um, but the team was just fantastic, and I'm so glad to see that the federal government is starting to send funding and set aside funding for farmers in order for them to be the solution to some of the climate issues that we're all facing. So that
Yeah.
was
So
pretty exciting. Yeah.
it's an amazing transition, and definitely more supports need to happen in that area. So, part of my understanding is that in your vision with what you're doing on your farm, you also wanted to see an investment in alternative energy. Can you just tell us a little bit about
Mm.
what that looks like?
Yeah. And this also speaks to the reason that we wanted to start farming. I mean, both Neil and I have our degrees in agriculture. We met at ag school at Guelph. But if you can imagine, neither of us actually saw ourselves as farmers. We were probably going to be either academics or in research or extension. But when we had our kids and we were seeing what was happening in the world around um, oil, the price of gas, if you remember in 2008, that spike, we just thought our kids need to learn some skills. If anyone should start a farm, it's the two of us, and we really wanted to model a different way of farming. So right from the very beginning, when we built our house, we used a geothermal system to heat the house so that we wouldn't have to rely on natural gas or a wood burning stove. After that, and we put on a solar hot water heater, which worked really nicely in conjunction with the geothermal. And then about 3 years ago, we installed a 10 kilowatt solar panel array. The price of solar panels was really dropping, and it finally made economic sense for us to do that. And since that solar panel went in, we've replaced a number of different, like, sort of tractors and ride on mowers with electric golf carts. We personally replaced one of our vehicles with a secondhand Nissan Leaf. So we've really moved on that way of towards electrification, with the solar panels being the incentive, right? The more that we can replace the money that went out for gas with, the energy that we produce on the farm, the payback to the solar panels is so much faster. So that's where we wanted to move, and so far it's making great economic sense, as well as, like, our staff love riding golf carts all around. They're very zippy and can move. We've got boxes on them, so it moves a lot of product in and out of the farm. Yeah, we just love it.
That's amazing. So in April, I introduced a bill in the House of Commons called Fight Against Food Waste Act. This bill does two things. One, establishes a National Food Waste Awareness Day. And secondly, it provides for the development of a national strategy to reduce food waste in Canada. So every year, a lot of people don't know this, about 11.2 million metric tons of edible food is wasted in Canada, and the cost is valued at about $49 billion. And this waste is going into landfills, and about 20% of Canada's methane emissions come from landfills.
Mhm.
So the more that I learned about this, the more passionate I became about it, because I recognize that so many people want to be part of the solution, and they don't always know what or where to start. And this is one small step, but I think it's an important one. Just buying what you need and reducing your food waste.
Mm.
So I just would like to hear your thoughts on my bill, and would love to hear any tips that you have about reducing emissions in the work that you do.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, for a farmer, we put our blood, sweat, and tears into growing food. And to see that food then not be eaten, it's heartbreaking for me anyway. So we try wherever possible, because there's food waste that happens pre-consumer, which I can control. So, if we have product that isn't sold at the end of market, or if we've got, fruit or vegetable that's cosmetically not looking great, we really try and have options to move that food either into process. We can chop it up and dice it and freeze it and sell it through the winter time, or we have connections with groups in the community that do food programs and can use that food. They don't care what it looks like. So there's a lot of donation that goes out into the community of sort of seconds and cosmetically imperfect food. So that's what we try and do, like throwing food on, even on the compost pile for me, like even if it is composted and returned to the soil, it's such a waste. So we want to have it eaten as quickly as possible. Once it reaches either a store or a consumer, that's where we lose some of that control. And I really I applaud the bill that's going forward, because that's where education and incentives for those stores and for people to just understand, yeah, if I don't eat this and I'm throwing it into the garbage, it's creating this other greenhouse gas ticking time bomb in the landfill. What a you know it's, again, it's a heartbreaking situation. There are people going hungry, and I know, like, I'm sounding like my mom voice, right? But um how do we prevent that? So a I think having more incentives for stores to basically channel food, unsold food, or food that's going to be, is nearing its sell by date, into other sectors. And I mean, the highest and best use for that food is for people to eat it. So, if it can't be sold as a second, to be donated into the charitable food sector. And then if it can't be eaten, I think the connection back to farms is really important, and it's missing, I think, across Canada. We have in BC some fantastic companies such as MeshX and Loop Resource that connect farmers with supermarkets, so that they can, once a week, a farm will go to either superstore or whatever the market is, collect all of their edibles that can't be eaten, and then they feed their animals with that. So again, it's going to be making food. It's a roundabout way, but it doesn't get thrown in the trash. But that's a lot of time and energy, and there's not always the incentive for stores to do that. So having policy that really requires stores to make those efforts, I think, is so, so important. So thank you for doing that.
Well, thank you. I'm really excited about it, and we'll see what happens. When you have a minority government, you never know if you're going to
Right.
get to vote on your bill. But I think it's important to always talk about these issues, because so many people don't know that food waste is actually a contributor, and there's
Yeah,
alternatives. There's alternatives.
absolutely.
So you are not only one of the owners of your farm, but you're also Area B director for the Comox Valley Regional District. I know that it is sometimes very challenging as a woman to bring your name forward to run for office. So I'm just wondering, what brought you to make that decision to run for Area B director, and how do you balance the two roles that you play?
Thanks for the question. What got me really fired up about running for politics was a specific issue around land use of agricultural land. And I saw, proposal going forward at a regional district to build a building on ALR land that I didn't feel would really serve the agricultural community. Um, so that's what kind of fired me up initially. And thankfully, still got elected, even though that was the big issue. I had, my interest in waste reduction was, and not seeing organics go into our landfill. That was a big part, and is still a big part of the regional district's work. My commitment to climate action has also, fed into the regional district. And being part of this community as a farmer, I just felt I was so well embraced by the community when we first arrived, that this was my opportunity to give back and advocate for obviously the folks that live in Area B. And since then, like I've, tried to keep that lens of working with community, being a conduit for the community that might not necessarily feel comfortable accessing the regional district, to be that friendly face for them. And so that's kind of what I see my role. Now, balancing politics and farming, surprisingly, it balances pretty well. Politics, at least at the regional district, we have much fewer meetings in the summertime. And it's quite a lot of meetings between January and March when we're doing budget. So it fits nicely because that's also the slow time for the farm. I have more time to give. And, as the political meetings sort of slow down in the summer, my work on the farm, I'm the berry picker and, I do that job. It's ramping up. So they do mesh nicely, except there's a couple months like May, I have to say, and September are kind of the 2 months that they both collide. So I can probably look a little bit frazzled during those months, but yeah, in for most part, it works well. And I'm super blessed that I have such a fantastic team here at the farm that if I walk away and I have to go to a meeting, things still get done. And similarly, support from family has been, so great. My kids do so much of the food preparation at home, and my husband's very supportive of my work. So that's I'm super blessed that way. Yeah.
That's wonderful. It's a balancing act, that's for sure.
Yeah.
So we're almost done. Two more questions. First of all, I love gardening, and composting is actually a passion of mine. I have a couple of composting. I have a very small yard, but I make it work. I had to stop growing vegetables after 2 years of politics. I just could not look at the pile of weeds because I just simply did
Yeah.
not have time to plant anything and kept thinking I'll do it one day, no time. So now my garden has been redone and is full of a lot of roses and a lot of creeping flowering plants. And I have a yard full of bees during the summer. Like it's so loud sometimes all I can hear is bzz.
Yeah.
But I'm just wondering if you have any core gardening tips that anyone watching would appreciate, no matter what level of gardening skill they have.
Sure. I think probably the biggest tip I have for gardeners, and you've kind of nailed it on the head, it's usually the weeding that does people in, right? That just, you put all your intentions into planting either flowers or vegetables. And then as the summer comes and you get busy and the weeding doesn't quite get done at a good time. So for me, mulching is incredibly important. And I cannot grow anything without putting either, straw or dried leaves or something to cover the ground to keep the weeds down. And if that doesn't work, or if your area is really large, using even a plastic mulch to keep the weeding under control. As a farmer, weeding is the one activity where there is zero payback for that type of work. So we really try and minimize the amount of weeding we have to do. It can be therapeutic, but I think, if it's looming and there's just a lot of weeds, it can be really hard on your soul. So setting up your garden to prevent as many weeds as possible, I think, is one of a really good solution. So deep, heavy mulching, with organic ingredients, like I said, like leaves and straw and seaweed. Coffee grounds are great mulch to use in the garden. Just keep smothering the weeds if you start to see them out. I like to just cover things. Yeah, that's probably the best advice that I would have for folks.
A little bit of weeding is therapy. Too
Yeah,
much is
yeah. I
traumatizing.
know,
You got to
right?
find that
Yes, the
balance.
balance, exactly.
So my last question is one that is just light and fun and reminds us all that we're humans. I'm going to ask you three quick questions. The first one is, what is your favorite beverage?
I do have a love of tea. So when you said, would you like to have tea with me on air? I was like, yes. So here's my cup of tea. I have to have a cup of tea every morning. It just part of it. I'm not a big coffee drinker anymore. I switched to tea, a while ago. And so I do really like it. Yeah.
And I know you're drinking some of the Stonehouse Campbell River tea today
Oh,
that we
good.
sent to you.
Oh my
That's so
God.
awesome.
Shout out to Stonehouse Tea. This is a fantastic blend. I am loving it. Thank you.
Good. I'm so glad to hear that. And can you tell us what one of your favorite books or movies are?
Um, I just read Braiding Sweetgrass by Robin
Mhm.
Wall Kimmerer, and I, I read it. I'm usually quite a voracious reader, and I like to read every night before bed. And as soon as I started reading it, I was like, I don't want this to end. Like it just spoke to me in so many well. She's such a great writer. So I literally savored it. Like I only read a couple of pages and I just stopped and let it kind of sink in. I highly recommend. It was such a good book. So yeah,
Excellent.
yeah.
And the last question is, why do you love where you live?
Uh, where I live is a perfect combination of natural beauty and a group of people and individuals who I feel are my people who get me. This community, I could feel the energy as soon as I arrived, and there were individuals who really just welcomed me with open arms. And I have to say big tribute to Wayne Bradley as one of those people who really welcome me and miss him.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, we miss Wayne. All right. Well, thank you. Thank you for taking a whole 31 minutes of time with me today to just have a little bit of a chat about gardening and sustainability and how to balance that out in our lives that are all so hectic in different ways. So, next week, we're not doing a tea talk. Instead, we're going to be doing a dental town hall on Wednesday. I hope people will register. Not too long ago and last week, actually, we did a tea talk on dental care. We sent out a mailer to people, and I have not seen anything like it. So many people sent us messages about their dental care and how they can't access it. So, we're going to have a little bit of a chat about what that means going forward. So, thank you so much for participating today, Arzina. I really appreciate it, and all the best to you and yours. And we'll see everybody else next week.
Thanks